If you're the police, where are your badges?
Badges? We ain't got no badges. We don't need no badges. I don't have to show you any stinking badges.
Voices blending, melodies ascending, harmony in the air. Our songs are never ending. In the barbershop we create magic. Brad and John show, yeah. It's pure classic. No instruments needed, just our vocal range. Notes flying high, it's our musical exchange. Tracy's station may try, but they can't compete. Our barbershop style, it can't be beat. Oh, the harmony of voices, so sweet. In the barbershop of life, our tunes will repeat. No need for instruments, no need for a band. Just the Brad and John show, the finest in the land.
It's the Barbershop Boys. John, what does that mean, John? Combest, what does that mean?
It means it's Friday.
It is Friday. It is Friday. And first off, intro to the show, John Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T, has this great website called johncombest.com. That's why I spelled Combest, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. And every single day for the past 24 years, never misses one single solitary day, puts together this extensive list of all the important stuff going on in the state of Missouri. Now, it's like a Dredge report for state of Missouri. Nothing fancy. You go there and you just see a bunch of links. Find out what you're interested in, click on it, and it takes you to that source. But what we do every morning, we bring it. Oh no, you know what? I messed up again, John. On Fridays, we bring in the Polka Boys. First off,
time for the John Combest Top 3.
and if I'm not mistaken, the Polka Boys are somewhere close to where this guy is buried. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And what we do is we count down the top 3. Casey, start the beat down.
In third place,
The next legislative session is just around the corner. And here's a question that I read on social media. What do we, the people, want to see in the next legislative session? And I read that on the social media accounts of State Senator Ben Brown. Brad, I have an event coming up for you Sunday afternoon, Sunday, November 23rd, to be exact. If you go to Moe's Restaurant at 499 Grand Avenue in Washington, Missouri, you can take part in one of Senator Ben Brown's local listening sessions. Come on out and tell Ben Brown what's important to you. Is it a state income tax cut? Is it a little bit more clarity on property taxes for seniors? Is it something else that might be going on in Jeff City? Or is it something not going on in Jeff City that you want to see Ben Brown carry the flag for? And I should not have ended a sentence in a preposition. I'll flog myself later for that. But Brad, once again, Sunday afternoon in Franklin County, go to Moe's Restaurant between 4 and 6 p.m. And if you want to know a little bit more about what actually happens at these listening sessions, at these forums, you can follow Ben Brown on social media. I follow him on Instagram at Brown4Mo. Now, Brad, you and other folks age 90 and older probably want to follow him on Facebook. I'm sure he has a Facebook account there. So this is one of those things, Brad, that we're going right into pre-filing of legislation. And I bet Ben will be able to say, I bet Senator Brown will be able to say, right when he files bills in early December, hey, I listened to my constituents, and here's some of the concerns and issues top of mind for them.
You know, it's interesting. Are the state legislators having the same problem that like the Congress people do when they show up? There's like all the haters and people disrupting the meeting and people with signs and things like that. Or are the state people pretty much immune from that?
I don't think so. I'm guessing if you're a Democrat state rep in an urban area or even a progressive suburban area, or you're a conservative Republican in a conservative Republican area, I don't think you have many protesters. And my theory on this, Brad, is that we've never talked about this on the show, but I think the likelihood that you would draw angry, sign-waving, shouty protesters is directly proportional to how quote-unquote big your office is and how far away you represent the people. So, for example, if you are Wesley Bell and you represent people in your offices in Washington, D.C., or you're Ann Wagner or Bob Onder, you're more likely to have people stand on a street corner and call you dirty names than if you are ward alderman in Chesterfield. You're probably not going to have people get shouty because they know that if they get shouty at a meeting, there's only a dozen people there and they're going to be like, stop screaming. What's your problem? Let's have a conversation. You get my point?
Yeah, I do. And I think your point is well taken about the fact that if you're a local guy, and obviously Ben Brown is a local guy out there in Franklin County. He's got Franklin County? He's got part of another county, doesn't he? Or is he exclusively?
Yeah, he also has Warren. And so I should, that's a great question, Brad. I should also note that he's had already these legislative sessions, forums, whatever you want to call them. In Warren County, he had one this past Sunday. He had one in Gasconade County on Monday. Franklin County is this coming Sunday. And then Osage County is the following Sunday, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And to your point, Brad, I think any state legislator would tell you if they do a good job and their staff does a great job. So Ben Brown's operation is led by Frank Catanzaro. We've mentioned Frank before on the show. There's not going to be a legislative issue of any import or any seriousness that a guy like Frank isn't well aware of and doesn't take to Ben, and or that Ben doesn't know on his own. So in other words, it's not like Ben is going to be, I'm struggling with my words here. It's not like Ben is going to be blindsided at a meeting by some issue he's unaware of. And so, yeah, to answer, this is a long-winded way of answering your question and saying, no, I haven't seen any state legislators get a whole lot of like vociferous pushback from unreasonable people, whether on the right or on the left.
Interesting. And the whole thing is sort of crazy. I think isn't it Ann Wagner who's not doing any in-person ones anymore? Isn't that what the deal is? Isn't she doing them all like Zoom and things like that?
No, I don't think that's accurate. And I think there's folks from Ann's office that would probably clarify that. I think Ann's position is that she does a ton of events throughout the district. I think what people have criticized her for is that she hasn't had a big mass, everybody come out to the Chesterfield Amphitheater, and we're going to do a huge event, and everybody can come and be shouty. I think that's the criticism of Ann Wagner.
Well, okay, I thought I read something somewhere. Maybe it's somebody else. But you know me, Brad.
I think that, and sorry to interrupt, I do think that folks who've criticized Ann Wagner, whether it's a Ray Hartman or any of the gaggle of Democrats running now, would say, why hasn't Ann had a big open town hall forum? I think that would be the criticism of Ann, that she hasn't had one of those.
Interesting. Okay, we ready for number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Up a notch to number 2.
It was the best of times. It was the okayest of times. That's sort of Charles Dickens there. I'm bringing you a story from the Washington Missourian today, Brad, that's pretty close to home. Now, here's the okayest of times headline. Opening weekend deer harvests low for second consecutive year. You'd read that and you'd think, hey, opening weekend in Missouri is a pretty big deal for deer hunters. Kind of sad that harvest is low. But the best of times, Brad, is that Franklin County had the largest opening weekend harvest in the state. And it was by a pretty decent margin. Now, the reason why Chris, and the story is brought to us by Chris Parker, the reason why Chris says that it's down is that he says it was another disappointing weekend with a second consecutive year of low harvests. So this is kind of a matter of, if you look at 2 years ago, Brad, and the first week that we did the show together, we talked about this data because Franklin County was once again at the top of the list of deer harvests. So in short, Franklin County had a huge year 2 years ago. It was down a little bit last year, and it's down a little bit this year. But Franklin County still has the largest deer harvest of anywhere in the state. And the other interesting thing that Chris points out in here is that for the first time and I think it's a decade, for the first time, Franklin County hunters are not required to bring their deer in for CWB, chronic wasting disease. I said CWD, chronic wasting disease, which is, I shouldn't say rampant because that's exaggerating the number of deer that have chronic wasting disease. But Franklin County hunters, although they're not required to get their deer tested, are encouraged to take their deer to other testing sites like St. Charles County, for example. And the reason why the Missouri Conservation Commission and the Missouri Department of Conservation aren't requiring it in Franklin County this year, they're trying to go to other hotspots. So in other words, they're trying to expand their testing to other sites. So you can read Chris Parker's story. I have a link up to it on my website today.
Yeah, I noticed that, it's funny you bring that up. I noticed that they were not on the list this year because normally they're always on the list, St. Charles County. So it's just kind of random as which counties they pick? Or they're looking...
I don't think it's random, but the MDC spokesman, Dan Zarlenga, told the Missourian, quote, "We're trying to kind of rotate our testing sites to try to accommodate more areas. We have limited staff and limited resources." So in other words, and I think that he also points out in here, if memory serves, as I scroll down here, less than 1% of deer that are tested are infected. But last season, Franklin County reported the second highest number of positive samples. So 24 deer last year in Franklin County had chronic wasting disease. So that's second highest in the state of Missouri. So I think it's just a matter of they're trying to get different sites set up, different parts of the state. And if it hasn't been a huge deal in an area, they think, well, gosh, we got to get to St. Charles County because we've been in Franklin County for 10 years.
Hey, it's interesting. The whole crazy thing with that, and matter of fact, I have two friends that have put out salt licks, and I've warned both of them because remember, you had the story that you're not supposed to be doing that anymore, right?
Don't be putting a salt lick out there, Brad.
Yeah, but was it? Didn't you say it was like a $250 fine if they catch you now or something like that?
I think so. Now what they should do is they should follow the Brad Hildebrand model because you have, let's face it, a pretty good idea that you should put people on commission to get people running red lights and other infractions. I think we should incentivize people to go snitch on neighbors that have salt licks.
And get a commission on that. So in other words,
get a commission on it. It could just be like, remember during COVID when St. Louis County and other governments were saying, hey, snitch on people that aren't following rules. And then everybody emailed the county and then somebody sunshined that document and you can see who's snitching on companies. I think that's hilarious.
John, for a minute, I know this is sort of off topic, but you just brought this up with the COVID thing. Can you imagine, like, for example, I put a thing on my Facebook page of a message board I took a picture of at a restaurant that said that if you don't wear a mask, they're going to take your temperature, and the only thermometers they have are rectal thermometers. Okay.
Oh, Brad, kinky.
But no, the point being is you look back at that and you think, God, were we a bunch of saps or what? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it was just a matter of people being able to draw ideological lines. So I'm not going to wear my mask into Schnucks because I'd love for an MFer to come up to me and tell me to put a mask on. And then there's other people that would wear a mask in a car and then give you a dirty look in your car if you weren't wearing a mask. It's kind of like, this is what I stand for. Get vaccinated.
Those are the ones.
Drive across the state like Brad Hildebrand and get a shot.
You bring that up now, I feel stupid. I went to Raytown, Missouri.
Yeah, you should, Brad. I mean, I say that lovingly, but you should feel like a complete moron.
Well, I was. Okay, number one.
The number one.
It's not every day that we got to present a story that involves one of Brad's key sources. Somebody really plugged in, somebody that gives us a lot of good political gossip via Brad. But this story brings it to us. And not only does it bring us a story involving one of Brad's favorite sources, but also the centerpiece of this story, the main character, Energy, was part of Brad's top 3 yesterday. A little bit more color on former Judge Matt Thornhill. Did you happen to see the new Post-Dispatch piece, Brad?
I did, and he's not former. He's still a current judge.
You're right.
Yes.
He hasn't quit yet, right? He's just on suspension.
Yeah, they gave him a 6-month suspension, and then he's got 18 months, but he has to retire at the end of 18 months. He can't run for re-election.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, good clarification there. So we'll use the present tense judge here. So if folks haven't seen or heard this story, it just came out in the Post-Dispatch, I think late night last night. The headline from Ethan Colbert, St. Charles County judge called GOP chair for input before ruling on voting case, emails say. So as the way I read this, Brad, and this is a bit convoluted, but here's the simplest way I think I can explain it. And keep me honest here if I get a detail wrong. There were a number of folks on the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee. So picture folks that are technically elected to represent party members in their township, Democrat or Republican. We happen to be talking about Republicans right now. And there were some members of the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee that wanted to ensure that election watchers and challengers could be at early voting sites in St. Charles County. Now, we won't get into the minutia of why you have election watchers and challengers. In my day, in the 1990s, we would use them because they could keep track of who came into a polling place. And then if there were, old decrepit people Brad's age that still needed rides to the polls, we could actually mobilize and get some of those folks out to the polls. St. Louis County employed election watchers at times. They're also generally seen as keeping an eye and making sure there's no nonsense or anything nefarious taking place. Okay, so now that I've over-explained that, there were a group of Republicans that said, hey, as long as early voting is going on somewhere, we need to be able to have election watchers in there. So you could consider that group, which is led by a gentleman named Hines. Hit him with the Hines. Hines is over there, Travis Hines. So you could consider that one group of people. And then you could consider maybe a Kurt Barr, the elections director. Maybe you could consider a second group of Republicans closer to Kurt Barr who say, hey, let's just pause for a minute. We're going to continue to have early voting here. And that first, without the election watchers necessarily. So that's how I understand it, Brad. And furthermore, this gentleman, Travis Hines, had a case before Matt Thornhill. And here's where Thornhill's controversy comes in. Thornhill wanted to ask the chair of the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee, a guy named Bob Eno, about his position on the case. And so Matt Thornhill called him with Hines in the courtroom. And Eno's like, yeah, I support this. If you listen to some people, Bob Eno said, hey, we support this as Republicans, having people, having election watchers and challengers there at the early voting sites. So again, this is how I understand it, Brad. So Thornhill issued a ruling that said, effectively, you can't have early voting at these places without allowing election challengers and watchers to come in. That next day, it ends up another judge, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It's not actually Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, but it's a different Dwayne Johnson, overruled Matt Thornhill's decision. And so in practice, Brad, nothing changed. People were still able to go vote early. But what this showed was that there were at least two sides of the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee, and they appeared to be split between folks like Eno and Hines, and then folks like Kurt Barr. Now, Ethan Colbert goes out and interviews Republicans on both sides. He interviews Kurt Barr's wife, who says, hey, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a judge. Actually, here's her quote, Jennifer Barr. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. But it seems to me that there is definitely a big ethical question whether a judge should be calling anyone about anything in a lawsuit and asking them without both sides being represented. Now, Brad, I'll point out as well, before we discuss this, that your friend Cindy Cristofanelli was also asked about this. And I think it's fair to say that Cindy is kind of on the, I guess you could call it the Kurt Barr side of the argument. Here's what Cindy said. She emailed Bob Eno. She replied to Eno's email the next day and said, so, Bob, is it your belief that Judge Thornhill called and inquired regarding your knowledge and support of this complaint was as a concerned citizen and not in your role as chairman of the SCC-RCC, wrote Cindy Cristofanelli. And of course, she's the mother of State Rep Phil Cristofanelli. Now, Bob Eno, his reply was terse. Bob replied pretty much verbatim everything I said to every female in my life circa 1995 to 2025, which is, this is my last email on the subject. It's dead. Move on. Bob didn't want to have any more discussion about it. So I guess this shows, Brad, that there are at least two factions in the St. Charles County Republican Central Committee. One would appear to be, I guess you could call them mainline Republicans, guys like Kurt Barr, women like Cindy Cristofanelli, and then folks like Travis Hines and Bob Eno. And I don't know, Brad. So this is, I'm not hip to all the factions that are out there, but this seems to be pretty much along faction lines.
John, you described it perfectly, because what's happened in St. Charles County is there was the old guard, and I don't mean old guard in respect to like age, because there were young people on there. And why do I know this? Because of the fact that we actually sat, matter of fact, Shelley Barr and I made a presentation to them about doing advertising. I guess it was probably back in 2000, I think it was. And that was sort of the old school Central County Republican Committee out there in St. Charles County. And Eno and most of the other people are sort of the new school. So it's, once again, it's this tribalism within the party. It's sort of like what's going on with the Democrats. You got the extreme left-wingers who are like, the Mondamis of the world, and then you've got the more moderates. And I think that's pretty much the same situation that's happening in St. Charles County with the Republicans. You know what? And if there was a time when I would play a drop, but John would get tired of me playing that drop. But I think I should play that drop. Don't you think, John?
Yeah, find a clip from somebody that is PCP-addled and that was justifiably put in his place by some officers of the law.
I just want to say, can we all get along? Can we get along?
Yes, Rodney King.
And it's naive to think that folks should get along, Brad, because you have factions, just as you acknowledged. You have factions kind of an old guard. Some would say, hey, we do things a certain way. We do things the right way. And then there's new people that come in that say, hey, to heck with the old way of doing stuff. We're aggressive. We want this or that. And then maybe those new guys in 20 years will turn over and they'll be the so-called old guard. And a bunch of young bucks will come in and challenge that system. I think the other practical thing here is, as I read this story, no one was kept from voting. So Thornhill's ruling didn't keep anyone from actually voting early the next day. It just had people in a state of confusion of whether or not the polls would be open or not.
John, and I'll give you something that maybe you'll roll your eyes at. I have been before Judge Thornhill. I gave my explanation of spending many, many appearances in front of Judge Thornhill. And I've also been in front of Dwayne Johnson as well, too, and he was not happy with me, but that's a whole other story. He got mad.
Well, is it because you challenged him for the WWE title?
No, he got.
Is it because you said you didn't like his performance in Moana, that he's overrated?
No. He got mad at me because I was representing myself in a case. Sounds like I spent all my time in court, but I was representing myself in a case, and I didn't have the proper form, and he got mad because he had to do it himself. But that's neither.
I would too, and I imagine if you're a judge or you're an attorney, and people come in and they think that maybe, 40 years ago they shot an attorney out of their balls, some woman who's an attorney now, so all of a sudden they're an expert. Or maybe they watched a bunch of episodes of Matlock in the 80s, and all of a sudden they can represent themselves in court. I would be annoyed by that too.
Well, he got especially mad when I had a witness on the stand, and I said, I want the truth, and the witness said, you can't handle the truth. It got a little bit out of control at that point in time.
Yeah, it was Colonel Nathan Jessup just rolled over in his grave.
Yes. Okay, we have to take a break. We have to get into B Block. And by the way, is this the first or second show of season 3? This is technically, I guess, the second show.
This is the 23rd show of season 19, Brad.
And where have I been?
Hey,
Okay.
Shelley Barr just texted. She wanted to know if we're going to go on the air in 12 hours. Hi, Shelley. We love you. Can you get Simply Bella back? Shelley, I miss hearing that beautiful woman's ads talking about how you can come in and start looking better for your man.